Jarvid Cortes here with Keller Williams Realty. And today, again, I have the one and only Liz Barletta from Ligorous Law.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we want to talk about something that is very important for the real estate industry. And Liz is going to clarify some of my personal questions and see how are we going to get ready moving forward and the way that we're going to be closing transactions. So what's going on, Liz? Can you tell us about what's going on with the new Baker law that he just signed?
Yes. So yesterday afternoon, Governor Baker finally signed into law the new remote notarization bill. So it's been something that a group of attorneys and legislators have been working with for what seems to be like months now. It's really just been weeks, but a long, hard fought several weeks trying to get this bill passed, and it's finally here. So obviously now that it's here, everyone's kind of just trying to figure out exactly what it says, how it impacts closings and all that stuff. So I'm happy to kind of go through the most important points and how it relates to us.
Definitely, for sure.
Okay. So the first thing is, this is not what I was hoping for, and I think a lot of practitioners were hoping for, which was a virtual notarization, virtual closing. In reality, it is, but it isn't. It is the same kind of closing that a buyer would normally do. For example, sitting with a pile of documents in front of them, signing them. The only thing is that instead of having your attorney with you next to you, your attorney is looking at you via Zoom or Facebook Live or whatever. So some kind of mechanism where you are in a video conference. The law doesn't actually specify what technology. That's being said, some title insurance companies may have a preferred technology that you use. So for practitioners out there, you have to be careful to not just assume that if you're going to start remote notarization, it's going to be possible. So what I was envisioning was that this was going to be, two parties in a room. All the documents were going to be digital. They e-sign. There would be some kind of virtual notarization, and then we're done. We can download that document and record it. Not the case. So everything is still paper-based. So all the transactions must take place where both the signatory, so maybe the buyer or the seller, whoever's signing documents, and the notary must be in Massachusetts. So I can't electronically note or remote notarize a client who actually lives part-time in New York, for example. If they're in New York and signing, I can't do it. Both parties have to be in Massachusetts. There must be forms of identification that the signatory presents. So for example, Jarvid, if you and I were in a closing, you were my client, you would get your driver's license and you would show it to me in the room like this so I could look at it. The same kind of conversation that I would normally have at closing, where I'm asking you if this is your free act in deed. I'd be asking you that same thing. And again, visually watching you sign. So what that means is you have to get those documents to this person. As you know, not every buyer or seller is technology savvy. They don't necessarily have great printers at home. I don't have the best printer at home either. Not everyone has a great scanner or anything like that. So what this really requires is an added step of getting the original pieces of paper to the client as well. So that's sort of a logistical step. So once they've signed, that's not where it ends. Once they've signed in some way, shape, or form, those documents that have been signed by them come back to the closing attorney in one way or the other, either by courier or overnighting the documents again. Then we have to set up another phone virtual conference where I hold up the documents and say, Jarvid, is this what you signed freely and voluntarily? You acknowledge it, then I can notarize. So the potential for timing, doing a fast closing is just impossible. So this is really kind of something that is reserved for sort of, I would imagine, really specific situations. A couple of different things too. the affidavit, so the attorney would sign an affidavit basically acknowledging that this was signed through this remote virtual notarization process. I have to keep that affidavit for 10 years in my files. I also have to record our interaction, both of them, and save that for 10 years. So if, God forbid, someone later says that they didn't really, sign freely and voluntarily, we have some proof. For practitioners, you have to double check with your insurance carrier, because you can't assume that your malpractice insurance is going to cover this type of thing. You have to also check with the lender. I've heard, I'm part of this Mass Real Estate Attorneys Facebook group, and so everyone's kind of sharing what's been going on. And a lot of the attorneys are mentioning that they've asked a bunch of their lenders, and their lenders are not yet approving this. So we have the option, but if the banks don't approve it, I mean, what good is it? So we have to make sure that the bank approves it as well. And I think for the most part, the only other thing that's really affecting is, so the law in itself restricts any closing, notarization, and any sort of estate planning. So if you have a will or a healthcare proxy or anything like that that needs to be notarized, those must be done by an attorney in Massachusetts or by a paralegal under an attorney's in Massachusetts supervision. So other random documents that you as a human being need notarized that are not related to those two things can be notarized in this fashion with a Massachusetts notary. So they don't have to be an attorney necessarily like you. Exactly. So if there are things that you have clients or family members or whoever need something notarized, you can do them in this fashion, but not for closings or anything related to real estate or estate planning. And I think that for the most part covers, I'm just taking a quick look at all the little steps. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about hearing all the...
I know that we talk a lot, and we were waiting for this to happen. And I know that it's not the ideal 100% way that we want to make sure that we close transactions, but it's a start. And I think that it's a good start. I heard a few things that you said very important is that although it's a good start, not everybody's computer savvy. Not everybody's going to have a printer in their property. Not everybody's going to be able to print all of these documents and understand this. So it's very complicated. And I know that we work with a lot of clients who don't really use technology as much. And to try to cater to those clients, it becomes more of a challenge. So at that point, a lot of people are just like, let's just do it the normal way. If they can utilize it this way. Is that correct?
Right, and that's kind of the chatter that we're seeing even within the real estate attorneys, that it's like, yeah, this is great. This, it will help in certain situations, but business as usual for the most part in terms of in-person closings. That's what most people are just going to do, because this adds so many different nuances that, again, in the right specific situation, if you have a lender that approves and you have a client that, and also that you have some flexibility with your seller, because that's the other thing that I'm thinking of too, is if we have to get a closing package, sometimes we get them the morning of closing. So what happens if we do, then the client's not getting the package until the next day. I'm not getting it until the day after that, so we can eventually record. So, you have to have kind of some flexibility with the other side in that type of situation.
So more communication, obviously, in order for this to work well, we're going to have to be obviously a lot of communication. I know that your law firms also send the disclosure and documents so that they can, get them 24 hours maybe in advance or overnight it if possible. I know that you guys go the extra mile with that. But I know that for sure is going to be very difficult for a lot of people moving forward. The good thing is that it's out there, and maybe it's not 100% where we want it to be, right, but it's a new tool that we have in our toolbox in the way that we help our clients when they're deciding either to sell or buy real estate. The other great thing that you mentioned, that it's part of this new Baker administration law, is that if you are a notary like me, you could also help your clients and help in the transaction and make sure that you follow the guidelines that they put out there. I know that I see them right now. Liz share these with me, and it's not as easy as we just think that it's just a video call, sign the document. You have to save it for 10 years. The video conference, whatever platform you use to record that conversation, has to be saved for 10 years. You have to send it back to them, the documents, so that they can sign, then receive the documents again, put it in a video. So the whole process can be a lot lengthy. So how do you see that this is going to work, and who do you see that is going to basically benefit from this the most?
Yeah, I think that for purchases and sales, I haven't seen, unless we can get to a point where, maybe it's a seller who is not buying something right away. They don't necessarily care if the buyer moves in. If you have a flexible transaction like that, and then you have someone who either doesn't feel comfortable leaving their home or whatever, this is a good option for them. I think it's also going to help potentially for like refinance volumes. So right now we're still cranking away at refinance closings, and sometimes those refinance clients don't necessarily feel that they should be coming into the office, because back before COVID, every real estate lawyer for the most part was super flexible and saying, okay, well, refinance, we'll do the closing at your house after work. And so somebody doesn't have to necessarily take the day off to refi. So those types of flexibilities that we usually would have given a client are kind of limited nowadays, especially because we have just limited time frames and limited staff and spaces to actually close, since we can't close in someone's home anymore. So, at the end of the day, I think this will help those types of closings too, since we have, for the most part, for borrowers who are refinancing who occupies their primary residence, there is a 3-day rescission, meaning we can't record the documents anyway until 3 business days after closing. So in those situations, if there's a delay of a day from when the client signs and when we receive the documents and notarize them, that's not a big deal, because we still have another couple days that we need to wait for rescission anyway before we record. So in those situations, I can see that being a positive. I think it's a little tough too for some practitioners out there, because I've heard through the grapevine that some offices are improperly already doing these kind of remote closings where they're doing this in a much less restrictive way than the law actually does. So one, they were committing malpractice beforehand, but now for those people who were used to just maybe getting into a Zoom room and then having the documents scanned over to them and they notarize, now with these added measures, it's going to have other people questioning and being like, why? So I don't know. It's not ideal, but I think definitely in those types of flexible seller and refis, I think it can be helpful.
And I think that the whole idea, I like it. It's another toolbox, and as many tools we can put into that toolbox to move forward. Like I said, with this whole COVID-19 pandemic, the better. I think that it's going to alleviate a lot of the hump that there is with refis and the way that they're utilizing the lenders, so that they can focus then on other products and other ways that it's going to help, again, our buyers and sellers. I'm sure that eventually they're going to adapt to it and change it. And I hope that we don't see issues with our lenders in trying to do this, so that we can get to the closing table, the best way possible. So I hope that lenders adapt to it as well.
And I think that especially as, if this continues to strengthen and more people become exposed, at some point, it's just a matter of math. More and more practitioners may not physically be able to be in their office, or with limited staff who have to be quarantined for other medical reasons. This allows those people to still conduct closings in a way. So that could also alleviate that backlog that a lot of offices are feeling, where closing attorneys who normally would close all the time can't necessarily do so. So it could help in those situations too.
So that is amazing. I know that I'm excited for this, because I know that you and I had talked about this before in the past, and I'm excited that, we can have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about it now. I know that, as always, you're available for help and to answer my questions and my clients' questions. What's the best number that people can reach you at?
Yeah, so you can always call me directly at 617-304-3404. My email is ebarletta@ligris.com. And if you can't remember a phone number or you forget, just text Jarvid and he'll get you.
Call me. And don't forget that if you need help notarizing any documents, I am here to help. I am a notarized person and I can notarize your documents.
Except real estate or estate planning.
What was that?
Except real estate or estate planning.
Exactly. That's why we have Liz Barlow. But with that being said, just know that we're doing this to put information there to try to help our buyers, our sellers, and our family members, and whoever needs to hear this moving forward, and that we are here to help. We're in this together. So stay home, stay safe, and thank you very much.